Okay, we're all set.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order and welcome to everyone for coming tonight to the Planning Commission, City of Bowling Green Planning Commission monthly meeting. Jamie, would you please call the roll?
Here.
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 Here. Here. Here.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the minutes which have been distributed to members of the commission beforehand. Are there any corrections or additions or deletions to those minutes? All righty, then the minutes are approved as they were passed out to all of us. Next is lobby visitation. We don't have any public hearings scheduled tonight, so if anyone in the audience would care to address us regarding anything that's either on or off the agenda tonight, you are welcome to do so at this time. You need to come to the microphone and state your name and address. Anyone care to say anything? All righty, close lobby visitation then. We'll get into the meat of the agenda. The first item is a potential annexation to the city of approximately 131.09 acres on Nims Road, identified as parcel number C11-511-07-000001400 from Center Township petitioner. Our Family Farms LLC is petitioner. Any discussion about the annexation? Heather, you want to start by saying a few words?
Sure. Well, in your packet, I gave you a copy of the petition. I gave you a copy of the resolution of the commissioners passing it, and then that's when they pass it on to the city for their review process. Gave you a map of the location, which I have on the screen, and I'm sorry, it's hard to read on the screen. But it's 131.09 plus or minus acres on Nims Road. It also has frontage along State Route 25, and this would be an annexation from Center Township. I know over several years, the city has had interested parties there to develop that into an industrial user. And I know the city is trying to work on that, so it's already part of the city. And that way, you know, there's a little bit of a quicker timeline if there is a user interested in purchasing the property and moving forward with the project. So I know that's where that comes from. I know if there's any other additional questions, Katie Thompson is here from Economic Development and would be happy to answer any further questions.
So this is a proactive step on our part, try to annex this to the city in anticipation will be developed at some.
That is my understanding.
Could be short term, could be longer term.
Correct.
Katie, do you care to say anything?
Yeah, I'd go to the mic, Katie.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate what Heather stated, Jobs Ohio, the state's economic development arm, has underwent a pretty significant site development effort in the past year. So they came to a bunch of communities all over Ohio, basically evaluating sites that we had partially ready and gave us action items to improve site readiness. And so this is kind of like Heather mentioned, that proactive step to begin doing that. And companies are really concerned about timeline and speed to market. So, you know, this is one thing that we could get done in advance. Any questions for me?
Anybody? Question, Katie?
No,
Pretty straightforward.
no pressure, Katie.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion among the commission members here? Do they have anything to say? Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion then that we recommend to city council that they accept this annexation. For a second,
I'll second it.
no further discussion. Jamie, call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda concerning the same piece of property is to assign some interim zoning to the property. I'm not going to read the parcel number again with all the zeros, but we're talking about the same piece of property as the last item. it's been recommended to us that we assign the M2 zoning to property. It's currently in agricultural use.
Correct,
So
yes.
that would be really the other possibility, I would think.
So by our zoning code, I, as a planning director, do have to recommend the A1 agricultural, but planning commission can recommend what you would like. I did give you a copy of the aerial map where we look up all the adjacent zoning. So to the west is Plain Township. So I gave you, it's a whole, I guess you'd say mishmash of different things from agriculture all the way to commercial to industrial. And then, of course, Center Township is to the east there. And there's another mixed bag of commercial, highway, commercial, agricultural, planned institutional. And then, of course, in the city, the M3 Business Park and B2 further south.
Yeah, as you said, a mishmash is a good way to describe it. There's a lot of different zoning in that vicinity. Anybody have any thoughts as to the A1 versus the M2?
If the economic development, and I'm assuming it's coming from Katie, is recommended that it be M2, and that's where the interest is, I think that makes a lot of sense. I agree.
I
Pretty
agree.
straightforward.
It seems to be pretty predominant opinion. I feel the same way. If we're trying to be proactive, why would we put the agricultural zoning? Then we
Right.
have to come back again to change it. Property worded. Any further discussion among commission members?
I will add that in the new zoning code, which I know we're trying to live in the current and then look at the future. The zoning district most comparable is the innovation and employment zone, which in our current code, we have several industrial classifications, but IE combines these all into one. So it seems like even if you went with M1 or M3, you likely will end up having it IE down the road.
Well, I'll make a motion again that we assign the M2 zoning to this property.
I'll second it again.
Okay, Amy, want to call the roll? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Moving right along, we have the proposed vacation of an unimproved portion of Gould Street between South Enterprise Street and Railroad Avenue. John Walker and Julianne Stevens, Stephen and Carla Meredith, David Cotting on behalf of Railview Properties, and Vicky Valentine Adler on behalf of Longview Rentals LLC are petitioners. Heather, we'll start with you again.
Sure. So we received basically we called a petition because all the adjoining property owners signed off on it on November 1st to request vacation of Gould Street. It is currently unimproved. Sorry, I got that flashed up. It's about 60 foot in width for the right of way. So it's a pretty large right of way. I attached a copy of the petition. I also gave you pictures of what that current right of way does look like. As far as asking departments on their feelings of the vacation, we did not have any concerns with this. Basically, we would request that there still be an easement there because we do have a Buckeye cable box that you can't tell by the aerial here, but it is basically where the improved Gould dead ends into the enterprise there. So if you went out there and viewed it, you would see it is right there. So that easement would be part of that right-of-way vacation. If it did happen, that's just done by ordinance anyways. So there wouldn't be concerns with that. There actually is combined sewer. I gave you a copy of that in your packet. There actually is not water to the building. That is a water line. But the combined sewer does run right along this little right of way right here. Hard to see that into the site. So that's basically it. And of course, it does have electric. So the additional right of way that's there would be the Railroad Avenue, which is this road right here that runs to Clough. So north-south between Lehman and Clough. The right of way there does vary quite a bit, but that would be the access point that's utilized now. And if this were vacated, this would be that only access point, obviously too, that's improved. My only concern from a planning department view was looking into the future for this potential site, because again, railroad would be the only access. Again, if this ever were redeveloped, I would think that would be pretty critical to have Gould Street improved at some point in time. So that was basically my concern, again, looking big picture, and I do believe that we likely would have to readdress these sites because Gould Street would no longer have that right of way. So I'm not quite sure if we would use Railroad or we would use Layman. So that's kind of an internal thing we would have to work through. Because right now it's actually addresses 419 Gould Street and then 420 to the south. So again, that's things we have to look at in our office, which makes the most sense for that site. But again, also with it not being improved, you know, I can see it both ways that there's not much value to it. And clearly it's being used for parking now. So that's, you know, something that likely wouldn't change anyways. And the city has no plans to actually pave there. So you would be making a recommendation to city council and they would hold a public hearing from here. So it's really up to you to ask any questions you may have of me.
Did you say, Heather, that the easement would still exist?
Yes.
Even if we vacate the property?
Correct.
All right, any discussion among council or commission members?
It's, I assume this has been being used, at least the stone part, as parking for quite some time.
Yes. It's a pretty
It's
old
never
site.
been, You know,
Mhm.
understanding the concern about future development, but that seems like a really long way off if it's ever gonna happen. Would be my take.
I'm inclined to think the same thing, Nate. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Easement still exists. All the people that live alongside the property on it vacate.
Right.
And if none of the other department heads in the city object to it, my inclination is to go along.
Heather, did you say that railroad street right away was 12 to 30 feet?
Correct.
width?
It's hard to see here, but it varies greatly.
Yeah, I don't have any, but otherwise, that's pretty concerning that if that ever does become an access point, something you know, difficult to get that right away. Hard.
What does okay, so if you vacate all that, easements remain, property still remains city property, correct?
No, no. What happens with a street or alley vacation, if it is vacated, basically it's split in half.
Mhm.
So that northern portion would go to all these, the owners, which I shouldn't say all, it's two, to the north, and then to the south, it would go to these owners. So it's basically deeded to them.
You know, to your point on the width there, I don't know if you can't really tell, but it looks like as it goes to the north, it gets skinny. Do we have any idea where it's the 12 and where it's 30 feet?
You mean the railroad?
Yeah, railroad.
That was
Yeah.
just using aerial tools on the auditor webpage.
Oh, yeah.
And my estimate that usually when you have right of way, it's an even number. So that was my estimate when I measured at different points where it does widen.
Okay.
So basically you can just see the little, you know, lines there. And then it widens here.
Why is the right of way so different with different places?
I'm not sure. This site was developed several decades ago, so, you know, there really wasn't subdivision regulations back then. And the zoning code, as you know, was effective in 75. So I'm obviously different like regulations is my guess, or no regulations at all for subdividing.
Heather, I'm just curious, when you say that it reverts back to the owners, what is their responsibility then?
It basically becomes their private property.
Okay,
Mhm.
so then the city is completely void of it. It's their private property and it's up to them to
Correct,
make sure it, okay.
correct. Besides our easement, if we ever needed to attend to any utilities there.
There's grass, they would need to mow it.
And I was gonna say, they would
Correct.
have to mow it and take care of it.
And they probably do now, because again, it's an unimproved alley, so.
Okay, thank you.
Else have any other thoughts? Okay. In that case, I would make a motion that we recommend to city council that they accept this street vacation that's been proposed.
I'll second it, Bob.
Okay, Jamie, you want to call the roll?
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes 5. Okay, that's the main part of the agenda tonight. Judy, do you have any report from the Zoning Board of Appeals?
I do. We had one request for variance, and if you can recall, prior to the November meeting, in the October meeting, that Mr. and Mrs. Sextina at 837 Tomahawk Lane had requested a variance to allow the construction of a 6-foot tall fence and the 25-foot front yard setback, and it's a corner lot. So the fence would be in the front yard that faces TP Street. That request for variance went down, so they came back with a new request for variance. And they want to make, because it was in the right of way, the visible triangle, ability triangle. So they wanted to now cut it down so that it was 4 feet in the visibility triangle, and then it would be the 6 feet around in the other areas. That request for the amended variance passed with, there was only four members of the zoning board at that particular meeting, and it passed 3-1. And that's the end of my reports, and we're having a meeting next Wednesday, so you all can come back and see the zoning board.
Okay, thank you, Judy. You have anything more for us tonight, Heather?
I do, very briefly. So our zoning permits are still down pretty significantly this year compared to last year. We're at 354 compared to 426. And that's down about 16.9%. We've had 21 single-family housing starts so far this year compared to 24 at this time last year. But this year we've had 1 multiple family, new construction, 3 commercial, and 3 industrial. We did have at this time last year 1 industrial building and 1 institutional, which was the city building. As far as new commercial industrial permits issued since last meeting, there were none. We still have several on hold that we're reviewing, which is Caliper Collision on South Main Street, the expansion of all size storage, and they have additional storage units at 2041 Victory Lane. And then Klaus Construction, we have a new industrial speculative building, which would be on Woodgate Drive, which is part of Woodbridge Business Park, and then Summer Grove Apartments, 96 units on South Main Street. We're still reviewing those plans. We did issue or approve construction plans for the Stonebrook Estates expansion, and you would see the final plat next. So once they do their improvements in the right of way, there is when they would come in front of you for their final plat to be approved and recorded. As many of you know, the zoning code work continues. City Council has held 4 work sessions so far. They just had one as of Monday, and I believe we had Will, Tom, and Bob there. So thanks for attending and listening. And then they have their next work session on December 19th at 5:30 p.m. in this room, which would be before their regularly scheduled 7 o'clock meeting. And as far as other updates, 328 East Court Street, you remember reviewing that and holding a public, or you didn't hold a public hearing, council did. They had their public hearing on November 21st, and they did pass that ordinance. So that house is our first owner-initiated house on the local historic register, which would include the historic overlay zone. So kind of exciting for the Historic Preservation Commission to have that done. And then I did attend the Planning and Zoning Conference for Northwest Ohio on November 18th. And, it was a one-day thing and it was interesting, but I didn't think there was anything really pertinent to share with you. But it's nice when it's in Toledo, nice and close. So that's it, unless you have any specific questions for me.
Okay, any questions for Heather? Anything else for the good of the order? All right, then I move we adjourn, and I think Joe seconded it and passed 6-0.